The Zalathi commander stood on the bridge of his warship, looking down at the blue and green planet below. Earth, such a small, insignificant world compared to the mighty empire that now surrounded it. Commander Krextor's mandibles clicked in amusement as he studied the tactical displays. "Primitive," he said to his second-in-command, Vexara. "Look at them. Still bound to a single planet. Still fighting amongst themselves with chemical explosives and metal projectiles." Vexara's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of agreement among their species. "The conquest should take no more than 3 rotations, Commander. Our initial scans show their military technology is centuries behind ours." The bridge crew chittered their approval. The Zalathi Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past century. Each victory had been swift and decisive. Their plasma weapons, shield technology, and combat armor made them nearly invincible. What could one backward planet do against such might? "Send the message," Krextor ordered. "Tell the humans they have 1 rotation to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we begin the ground invasion." The ultimatum was transmitted to every major communication center on Earth. The response came back within hours, delivered by a human male in a dark uniform who appeared on their main screen. His face showed no fear, only a slight smile that made Krextor's scales ripple with unease. "This is General Marcus Webb, representing the United Earth Defense Council," the human said. "We've received your demands. Our answer is no." Krextor leaned forward. "You dare refuse the Zalathi Empire? Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your aircraft cannot match our fighters. You doom your species to slavery." The general's smile widened slightly. "We'll see about that. If you want Earth, come and take it." The transmission ended. Krextor's rage filled the bridge like a physical presence. How dare these primitives show such arrogance? He turned to his invasion coordinator. "Prepare the ground forces. We'll show these humans the price of defiance. Target their major cities first. I want their leadership crushed within—" "Commander," Vexara interrupted, studying her console. "The humans appear to be evacuating their cities. Our scans show massive population movements toward wilderness areas." Krextor waved a dismissive claw. "Let them run to their forests and mountains. There's nowhere to hide from the Zalathi Empire. Begin the assault." The first wave of drop pods screamed through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Each pod carried 20 Zalathi warriors, their bodies encased in powered armor that could shrug off most conventional weapons. They expected to land in city centers, to fight human soldiers in urban environments where their technological superiority would guarantee victory. Instead, they found empty streets. Squad leader Zeknon emerged from his pod in what the humans called New York City. His squad spread out, weapons ready, scanners searching for any sign of resistance. The towering buildings stood silent. Abandoned vehicles lined the streets, not a single human in sight. "Where are they?" asked one of his warriors. "Hiding," Zeknon replied, though uncertainty gnawed at him. "Spread out. Check the buildings. They must be—" The explosion came from below. The street itself erupted in fire and debris, swallowing 3 of his warriors before they could react. As Zeknon tried to process what had happened, projectiles began raining down from the windows above. Not energy weapons, but simple metal bullets that somehow found every gap in their armor. "Shields up!" he screamed, but more explosions tore through his squad. The humans had turned their own city into a trap. Every street was mined. Every building held snipers who knew exactly where Zalathi armor was weakest. Within minutes, Zeknon's squad was gone. He died trying to call for evacuation, a simple knife between his chest plates, wielded by a human who had somehow appeared behind him without triggering any sensors. The same scene played out in cities across the planet. London, Moscow, Beijing, Sydney, all empty shells filled with traps and shadows. The Zalathi lost thousands of warriors in the first day, and they had yet to see a human military unit. Krextor raged aboard his ship. Cowards! They flee rather than fight. Track their populations. Find where they're hiding. The scanners showed the truth. Billions of humans had dispersed into the wilderness areas of their world. Forests, jungles, mountains, deserts, swamps, environments the Zalathi had dismissed as irrelevant to modern warfare. Send the second wave, Krextor ordered. Hunt them down. How long can they hide in their primitive wilderness? The Zalathi had conquered worlds with toxic atmospheres and crushing gravity. Surely Earth's natural environments posed no real challenge. Their warriors were the finest in the galaxy, trained in all forms of combat, or so they believed. Strike Force Alpha landed in what the humans called the Amazon rainforest. 300 Zalathi warriors equipped with the best tracking technology their empire could provide. Their mission was simple: locate human refugee camps and eliminate all resistance. Captain Dexlor led his troops into the green hell with confidence. His armor's environmental controls kept him cool, despite the oppressive humidity. His sensors could detect life forms from kilometers away. His plasma rifle could vaporize a dozen humans with a single shot. The jungle swallowed them whole. It started with the sounds, the constant noise of unknown creatures, the rustle of leaves that might be wind or might be movement. Their sensors showed life everywhere, millions of creatures creating a chaos of biological signatures that made tracking humans nearly impossible. Then came the heat. The Zalathi came from a cool, dry world. Their armor's environmental systems, designed for the vacuum of space and alien atmospheres, couldn't cope with the sheer humidity of the rainforest. Warriors began overheating within hours, their efficiency dropping rapidly. "Maintain formation," Dexlor ordered, though sweat was pooling inside his own armor. "The humans can't have gone far." They pushed deeper into the jungle. The trees grew thicker, the canopy blocking out the sky. Their communication with the orbiting fleet became sporadic. GPS systems failed as the dense foliage interfered with signals. That's when the attacks began. Private Kexval was the first to die. Something thin and sharp punched through his neck joint, and he collapsed without a sound. By the time his squad mates noticed, his killer had vanished into the undergrowth. "Contact!" someone shouted, firing wildly into the trees. Plasma bolts seared through vegetation, starting small fires that filled the air with smoke. But there was nothing to hit. No enemy to fight. More warriors fell. Primitive traps, pits filled with sharpened stakes, swinging logs studded with metal spikes, thin wires that decapitated the unwary. The Zalathi's advanced sensors couldn't detect wood and vine, materials that blended perfectly with the surrounding forest. Then came the poison. Darts coated with toxins from local frogs and snakes. The Zalathi's medics had no antidotes for Earth's biological weapons. Warriors died in agony, their nervous systems shutting down while their comrades watched helplessly. Dexlor tried to maintain order, but panic was spreading through his force. They were trained for stand-up fights, for overwhelming enemies with superior firepower. This silent, invisible warfare was beyond their experience. "Fall back," he finally ordered. "Return to the landing zone." But the jungle had shifted around them. Paths they had taken hours before were now walls of impenetrable vegetation. Their electronic maps were useless. The more they tried to navigate, the deeper they went. The humans struck again as night fell. The darkness under the canopy was absolute, and while the Zalathi had night vision, it couldn't penetrate the dense foliage. Warriors disappeared one by one, pulled into the shadows by enemies who knew every root and branch. Dexlor never saw his killer. One moment he was trying to rally his remaining troops, the next he felt a presence behind him. The knife slipped between his armor plates with practiced ease. As he fell, he glimpsed his attacker, a human covered in mud and vegetation, eyes cold and calculating. Not a soldier in uniform, but something far more dangerous. A predator in its natural habitat. By morning, Strike Force Alpha had ceased to exist. 300 of the Empire's finest warriors gone without inflicting a single confirmed casualty on the enemy. The reports reaching Krextor were beyond belief. Zalathi forces were being systematically destroyed across the planet. In the mountains of Afghanistan, warriors trained for low-oxygen environments found themselves unable to match humans who had lived at altitude for generations. The thin air that barely affected the locals left Zalathi gasping and sluggish. In the Sahara Desert, the extreme heat overwhelmed their cooling systems. Zalathi warriors, carrying high-tech equipment and heavy armor, couldn't match the endurance of humans who knew how to find water and shelter in the seemingly barren landscape. Sandstorms fouled their equipment, while their enemies navigated by stars and wind patterns. The frozen wastes of Siberia were no better. The cold sapped power from their weapons and armor. Ice and snow jammed their equipment. Humans on simple skis outmaneuvered hover platforms that couldn't function in the extreme conditions. But it was in the jungles where the Zalathi died in the greatest numbers. The rainforests of Earth, Amazon, Congo, Borneo, became graves for thousands of alien warriors. Each expedition sent to root out human resistance simply disappeared, swallowed by the green darkness. "This is impossible," Vexara said, reviewing the casualty reports. "They're using primitive weapons, knives, arrows, traps that wouldn't stop a child's toy robot. How are we losing?" Krextor stared at the tactical display showing the positions of his ground forces. Or rather, their last known positions. Entire battalions had gone silent. Supply lines were being cut by enemies who struck and vanished like smoke. His mighty invasion force was being bled white by an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. "Send in the heavy armor," he ordered. "Burn the forests, poison the water. If they want to hide in their wilderness, we'll destroy it all." The order went out, but implementing it proved harder than expected. Tanks designed for open battlefields became stuck in swamps and ravines. Aircraft trying to spray defoliants found their engines clogged by volcanic ash in some regions or ice in others. The planet itself seemed to fight against them. And always, the humans struck from the shadows. They had learned to use their world as a weapon, turning every natural feature into a tool of war. Avalanches buried Zalathi positions. Floods washed away camps. Wildfires drove armored columns into ambushes. Worse, the humans weren't just hiding in the wilderness. They were thriving in it. Satellite imagery showed they had established hidden bases deep in the forests and mountains, using the natural resources to sustain themselves. They were building weapons from materials the Zalathi sensors couldn't track, training new fighters who knew the land like their own bodies. 3 weeks into the invasion, Krextor received a transmission from the human general who had refused their surrender demand. The man looked no worse for wear despite the ongoing conflict. "Commander Krextor," General Webb said calmly, "I believe you're beginning to understand your situation. You came here expecting to fight our technology. Instead, you're fighting our world, and you're losing." "We have barely begun," Krextor snarled. "We'll glass your entire planet if necessary." "You could," Webb agreed. "But that would defeat the purpose of conquest, wouldn't it? You want our resources, our world intact. And as long as you have troops on the ground, we'll keep killing them. Your choice." The transmission ended, leaving Krextor with a terrible realization. The humans had turned the invasion into a war of attrition, one where all the advantages lay with them. His forces needed constant resupply from orbit. They needed technology that the environment constantly degraded. They needed clear battlefields and visible enemies. The humans needed none of that. They ate native foods, drank from hidden springs, made weapons from wood and stone when necessary. They knew every cave to hide in, every trail to ambush from. The wilderness that the Zalathi had mocked as primitive was in fact the most sophisticated defense system they had ever encountered. But Krextor was not ready to admit defeat, not yet. He had one more card to play, one that would teach these primitive humans the true meaning of fear. "Prepare the Eternal Guard," he commanded. "If regular warriors cannot root them out, we'll send in the special forces. Let's see how their wilderness tactics work against troops who have conquered 100 worlds." The Eternal Guard were the elite of the elite. Warriors enhanced with the best cybernetics and genetic modifications the Empire could provide. They had crushed rebellions on worlds far more hostile than Earth. Surely they could handle whatever tricks the humans had learned in their forests and mountains. As the Guard prepared to deploy, neither Krextor nor any of his staff noticed the small, mud-covered human watching from the edge of the nearest jungle. The observer spoke quietly into a radio that looked primitive, but worked perfectly in conditions that jammed Zalathi communications. "Enemy special forces preparing to deploy. Alert all ghost units. Time to show them what Earth's special forces can really do." In jungles and forests around the world, men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment received the message. Navy SEALs, SAS, Spetsnaz, and a dozen other elite units had spent weeks learning from the indigenous peoples who truly knew the land. They had combined ancient hunting techniques with modern warfare, creating a form of combat the galaxy had never seen. The Zalathi thought they understood warfare. They were about to learn that on Earth, in Earth's wilderness, humans were the apex predators, and the hunt was just beginning. The Eternal Guard descended through Earth's atmosphere in specialized pods designed to withstand any environmental condition. Each warrior was a living weapon, their bodies modified with cybernetic enhancements and genetic upgrades that made them faster, stronger, and more resilient than any normal Zalathi. They had fought in the methane swamps of Kepler 442b, the crystalline caves of Proxima 3, and the radiation-soaked wastelands of dying stars. Earth's jungles would be child's play. Guard Captain Thexor reviewed his mission parameters as his pod streaked toward the Amazon basin. His unit of 50 guard warriors would establish a beachhead, then systematically hunt down and eliminate all human resistance in the region. His enhanced eyes could see in every spectrum, his reinforced skeleton could withstand impacts that would shatter normal bones, and his neural implants processed combat data at superhuman speeds. The pods crashed through the canopy in a tight formation, their impact zones calculated to create a defensive perimeter. Thexor emerged into the humid air, his enhanced lungs automatically adjusting to filter toxins and optimize oxygen intake. His squad deployed with mechanical precision, weapons covering all angles, sensors scanning for threats. "No human life signs within immediate vicinity," reported Sergeant Mexar, his voice coming through their hardened communication implants. "But these biological readings are still causing interference." "Expected," Thexor replied. He had studied the reports from the failed regular forces. "Switch to motion tracking and thermal overlay. Set up the command post. We establish our base, then expand outward methodically. No rushing, no splitting up. We are the Eternal Guard. We do not make the mistakes of lesser warriors." As his troops worked to clear a landing zone and set up their equipment, Thexor couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The jungle was loud with animal calls and insect buzzing, but something about it felt wrong. It took his enhanced brain several seconds to realize what bothered him. The sounds were too regular, too patterned, like a recording played on loop. "Defensive positions," he ordered sharply. "Something is—" The first shot came from an impossible angle, threading between two trees to strike Guardsman Lextor in the exact spot where his helmet met his chest armor. The specialized bullet, designed specifically for this purpose, penetrated the minimal gap and severed his spinal cord. Enhanced or not, he dropped instantly. "Contact! Return fire!" Thexor roared, but there was nothing to shoot at. The jungle had erupted in authentic sounds now. Birds screeching, monkeys howling, a cacophony that overwhelmed even their enhanced audio processors. More shots came from different directions. The Eternal Guard's armor was superior to the regular forces, but the humans had learned. They weren't aiming for center mass or trying to penetrate the strongest parts. Every shot targeted joints, sensor clusters, or the tiny gaps necessary for movement. "Form defensive circle," Thexer commanded. His warriors were good, responding instantly despite the chaos. Their weapons filled the air with plasma fire, cutting down trees and starting fires. "Thermal smoke, wide dispersal." The smoke grenades would blind human senses while their enhanced vision cut through it easily, or so they thought. As the smoke billowed out, mixing with the humid air and ash from burning vegetation, their thermal sensors started showing false readings. The humans had somehow saturated the area with heat sources, small fires, heated rocks, even animals driven toward them. Through the chaos came a new threat. Figures emerged from the smoke like ghosts, moving with impossible silence. Not regular soldiers, but warriors who had made the jungle their home. Special forces operators from around the world, trained to perfection and armed with knowledge the Zalathi couldn't counter. Staff Sergeant Jake "Ghost" Morrison of the U.S. Army Special Forces had spent 3 weeks with an indigenous tribe, learning secrets passed down for thousands of years. How to move without disturbing a single leaf. How to use the jungle's own sounds to mask approach. How to become one with the environment in a way no technology could replicate. He struck first, his knife finding the gap in an Eternal Guard's knee joint. The warrior's leg gave out, and before his enhanced reflexes could respond, Morrison had already vanished back into the smoke. Around the perimeter, his team struck simultaneously. British SAS, Russian Spetsnaz, Brazilian Special Operations, all moving in perfect coordination despite coming from different nations. The Eternal Guard tried to adapt. Their cybernetic enhancements gave them superhuman reaction times, but the humans weren't fighting in ways that triggered those reactions. They used the environment itself as a weapon. Vines that looked natural suddenly tightened around necks. What seemed like solid ground gave way to pits filled with biological agents that corroded armor. Trees weakened by precise cuts fell at exactly the right moments. Thexer's tactical computer was going haywire trying to process the assault. Every defensive adjustment they made was countered instantly, as if the humans could read their minds. It took him precious seconds to realize the truth. They could. Not literally, but the humans had been watching Zalathi forces for weeks, learning their tactics, their responses, their very way of thinking. They were fighting an enemy who knew them better than they knew themselves. "Heavy weapons free," Thexor ordered. "Burn it all." The Eternal Guard unleashed their most powerful armaments. Plasma cannons that could melt through starship hulls, gravity bombs that could crush buildings, sonic weapons that could liquefy organs. The jungle around them became an inferno of destruction. But the humans had anticipated this too. They had already withdrawn to secondary positions, leaving behind only more traps and surprises. The massive expenditure of firepower revealed the Guard's positions to human spotters kilometers away, who relayed coordinates to mortar teams hidden in caves and valleys. The indirect fire that rained down wasn't high-tech by Zalathi standards, but it was perfectly calculated. White phosphorus mixed with local plant extracts created smoke that actively corroded their equipment. High explosive rounds fused with timer delays turned their defensive positions into death traps. And always, the snipers picked off any guard who exposed themselves for even a moment. Sergeant Mexar died trying to establish a communications link with the fleet. The jamming wasn't electronic. The humans had created a canopy of metallic chaff using processed plant fibers and mineral deposits, a low-tech solution that their sophisticated equipment couldn't counter. One by one, the Eternal Guard fell. Their enhancements meant nothing when they couldn't find an enemy to fight. Their superior weapons were useless against shadows and mist. Their tactical computers couldn't process warfare that followed no logical patterns, that used the very chaos of nature as its primary strategy. Thexor found himself alone, his unit destroyed by an enemy that had suffered perhaps a handful of casualties. His enhanced senses detected movement all around him, but nothing his weapons could target. In desperation, he activated his personal shield and broadcast a challenge. "Face me!" he roared. "Fight with honor!" "You cowards!" The response came from directly behind him, impossible though that should have been. His shield was omnidirectional, his sensors covered every angle. But Master Sergeant Chen of Taiwan's Special Forces had learned from masters who had studied invisibility for centuries. Not technological invisibility, but the art of being where the eye didn't look, moving in the moments when attention shifted. "Honor?" Chen asked quietly. "You invaded our world, threatened our families, tried to destroy our home. We're not fighting for honor. We're fighting for survival." Thexor spun, weapons rising, enhanced muscles responding at superhuman speed. He was still too slow. The shaped charge Chen had attached to his shield generator detonated, overloading the system in a cascade of feedback. As the shield collapsed, a dozen shots from a dozen angles found every vulnerability in his armor. The captain of the Eternal Guard fell to his knees, his enhanced body finally failing. Through his fading vision, he saw them emerging from the jungle, humans covered in mud and vegetation, carrying weapons that looked primitive compared to his own. But their eyes held something no enhancement could provide, the absolute determination of those defending their home. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Eternal Guard units, the finest warriors in the Zalathi Empire, were being systematically destroyed by humans who refused to fight by galactic standards of warfare. In the highlands of Scotland, guard warriors who could track prey across light years couldn't find SAS operators who knew every rock and stream. In the tundra of Norway, enhanced senses meant nothing when the enemy could navigate by wind patterns and snow consistency. Commander Krextor watched the disaster unfold from his command ship. The tactical displays showed red markers vanishing one by one, each representing an Eternal Guard warrior worth more than a dozen regular troops. His second-in-command approached hesitantly. "Commander, perhaps we should consider orbital bombardment, remove the wilderness entirely, and destroy the very resources we came to claim?" Krextor's rage was cold now. "That's what they want. They've turned their world into a weapon, knowing we need it intact." Another report came in. A guard unit in the Congo had been lured into an area where the local tribes had allied with special forces. The combination of ancient knowledge and modern tactics had resulted in total annihilation. The jungle itself seemed to be fighting them, with insects carrying diseases their medical systems couldn't counter, plants that released spores affecting their equipment, and water sources that had been naturally contaminated by minerals that reacted violently with Zalathi biochemistry. "There must be a pattern," Vexara insisted, studying the data. "Some weakness we can exploit. They're still just primitives using their environment." "Are they?" Krextor turned to face her. "Or have we been the primitives all along? We came here with shields and plasma weapons, thinking technology made us superior, but they've shown us that knowing how to use a world is more powerful than any weapon we've created." The admission hurt, but the evidence was undeniable. The humans weren't just hiding in their wilderness. They had transformed it into the most effective military defense system the galaxy had ever seen. Every forest was a fortress, every mountain a stronghold, every swamp a trap waiting to be sprung. Reports from the Cyber Warfare Division made things worse. The Zalathi's advanced computer systems, designed to work in the clean environments of ships and cities, were failing in the field. Humidity corroded circuits. Mud and plant matter clogged ventilation systems. Insects drawn to electromagnetic fields built nests in critical components. The humans didn't need to hack their technology. The planet was doing it for them. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a broadband transmission from the planet." General Webb appeared on the screen again, this time standing in what looked like a jungle clearing. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows, were figures in various Special Forces uniforms. The message was clear. Earth's elite warriors stood united. "Commander Krextor," Webb began, "I imagine you're beginning to understand your situation. Your regular forces have failed. Your elite forces have failed. Would you like to continue sending your people to die in our forests and mountains?" "What do you want?" Krextor asked, his voice heavy with resignation. "What we've always wanted, for you to leave. Earth is our world, and we know it in ways you never could. You thought our wilderness was a weakness, something primitive to be mocked. But this planet shaped us, made us what we are. Every jungle, every desert, every mountain. They're all part of our strength." Webb gestured to the forest around him. "Your empire spans the stars, but you've forgotten what it means to truly know a world. We haven't. This is our home, and we'll use every tree, every rock, every drop of water to defend it." "You cannot hide forever," Krextor said, though the words sounded hollow even to him. "We could maintain a blockade, prevent you from ever leaving your world." "Perhaps," Webb acknowledged. "But while you waste resources watching us, how many other systems might rebel? How many might learn from our example? You came here for an easy conquest and found something else entirely. The question is, how many more lives are you willing to lose to learn what we already know?" The general leaned forward slightly. "Here's our offer. Leave now, and this ends. Continue the invasion, and we'll teach every human on this planet the lessons we've learned. 8 billion people who know their land better than you know your ships. How long can your empire afford this war?" Krextor looked at the tactical displays showing his losses. Thousands of warriors dead, including hundreds of the Eternal Guard. Equipment worth entire star systems destroyed or rendered useless. And they had gained nothing. Not a single strategic objective achieved. Not a single human population center controlled. But it wasn't just the military losses that ate at him. It was the knowledge that they had been outfought not by superior technology, but by superior understanding. The humans had turned the very concept of warfare on its head, making their perceived weakness into insurmountable strength. "I need to consult with my superiors," Krextor said finally. "Of course," Webb replied. "We'll be waiting. In the meantime, I suggest you recall any forces still on the ground. The jungle gets more dangerous at night, and our people are just getting started." The transmission ended. Krextor stood in silence for a long moment, then turned to his bridge crew. "Send the recall signal. All ground forces are to return to orbit immediately." "Commander?" Vexara looked shocked. "We're retreating?" "We're reassessing," Krextor corrected. "And send a priority message to the Imperial Council. Tell them we've encountered a form of warfare our military doctrine never anticipated, one where the battlefield itself is the enemy, and the defenders are merely its instruments." As Zelathi forces across Earth received the withdrawal order, many found themselves under increased attack. The humans seemed to sense their desperation and pressed harder. Extraction sites became killing grounds. Landing craft trying to evacuate troops faced obstacles that seemed to appear from nowhere: fallen trees, sudden mudslides, flash floods that shouldn't have been possible. The message was clear: leaving would be as costly as staying. In the jungles of Borneo, Captain Sarah Chen of Australian Special Forces watched through her scope as Zelathi warriors struggled to reach their evacuation point. Her team had spent hours setting up the ambush, using knowledge passed down from Dayak headhunters combined with modern special operations tactics. "Should we let them go?" her spotter asked quietly. Chen considered. They could inflict more casualties, but the aliens were beaten. More importantly, they needed survivors to tell their story, to spread the word through the galaxy that Earth was not easy prey. Let them run, she decided, but make it cost them. I want every alien who makes it off this planet to have nightmares about Earth's jungles. Her team opened fire with calculated precision, not aiming to annihilate, but to terrorize. They wanted the Zalathi to feel hunted every step of the way to their ships. The psychological victory was as important as the physical one. By the time the last Zalathi warrior lifted off from Earth's surface, their invasion force had been reduced by 60%. The survivors were demoralized, many suffering from conditions their advanced medicine couldn't treat. Infections from Earth bacteria, toxins from native plants, and psychological trauma from facing an enemy that turned nature itself into a weapon. Krextor received the final casualty reports in his ready room. The numbers were staggering. The Zalathi Empire had never suffered such losses in a single campaign. Worse, they had nothing to show for it. No territory gained, no resources captured, no populations subdued. His career was over, he knew. Perhaps his life as well, depending on how the Imperial Council viewed this failure. But as he prepared his final report, he felt compelled to add a warning. Earth cannot be conquered through conventional means. Its defenders have achieved perfect synthesis with their environment, turning their entire world into a weapon. Any future attempts at invasion should be reconsidered. The humans have shown that technological superiority means nothing when facing an enemy who truly knows their terrain. They have revolutionized warfare in a way our empire must study and understand. Or we risk this defeat being repeated elsewhere. He paused, then added one final note. We mocked them as primitives hiding in their wilderness. We were wrong. They are apex predators defending their territory, and their jungle is not a place of refuge. It is a killing ground where they reign supreme. Back on Earth, the victory celebrations were muted. The defenders knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy now knew humans could fight, but that knowledge might bring more enemies, not fewer. In hidden bases around the world, Special Forces teams continued training, sharing knowledge, preparing for the next threat. General Webb stood in the Pentagon Situation Room, looking at satellite imagery of the departing Zalathi fleet. Around him, military leaders from every nation gathered, former enemies now united by the common threat they had faced. They'll be back, the Russian general said simply. Maybe not the Zalathi, but someone will try again. Then we'll be ready, Webb replied. We've shown the galaxy that Earth knows how to fight on its own terms. Let them come with their shields and plasma weapons. We have something more powerful. What's that? Asked the Chinese admiral. Webb smiled grimly. Home field advantage. And the knowledge that every forest, every mountain, every desert on this planet is full of humans who now know exactly how to turn nature into the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. Outside, in the jungles and forests of Earth, the Special Forces teams melted back into the wilderness. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its cities, but its primal connection to the world that birthed it. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. On Earth, humans weren't just the dominant species. They were the planet's immune system, and they had just shown the universe what happened to invaders who threatened their world. The news of the Zalathi Empire's defeat spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, in 100 different species' languages, the same story was told. The mighty Zalathi, conquerors of 17 star systems, had been driven from a single primitive planet by humans who fought with knives and knowledge instead of shields and starships. On the trading station orbiting Kepler 22b, merchants and pilots gathered around viewing screens, watching leaked footage from Zalathi armor cameras. They saw elite warriors falling to invisible enemies, sophisticated equipment failing in simple mud, and entire armies vanishing into green wilderness without a trace. Impossible, muttered a Vraxan trader, his 4 arms gesticulating wildly. The Zelathi have the finest military in the known galaxy. How could primitives defeat them? An old Kithari merchant, her feathers dulled with age, made a sound that might have been laughter. You young races always make the same mistake. You think technology equals superiority. But I remember the stories of the first expansion, when we tried to colonize Thanatos IV. The silicon-based natives there had no technology at all, but they knew their crystal caverns like we know our nests. We lost 3 colony fleets before we learned to leave them alone. But these are just humans, the Vraxan protested. Carbon-based, fragile, bound to a single world they've had millions of years to learn, the Cathari interrupted. While we've spent the last few centuries jumping between stars, forgetting what it means to truly know a place. Perhaps these humans have something we've lost. Similar conversations echoed across the galaxy. Military academies requested copies of the battle footage. Xenobiologists suddenly found funding for studies on human adaptation and psychology. And in the high chambers of various galactic governments, leaders pondered the implications of Earth's victory. On the Zelathi homeworld, Commander Krextor stood before the Imperial Council, his career and life hanging in the balance. The 5 ancient Zelathi who ruled the Empire sat in judgment, their scaled faces unreadable. You lost 60% of our invasion force, the Prime Counselor stated, including 400 Eternal Guard. Explain this failure. Krextor had prepared for this moment during the long journey home. Honored counselors, we did not lose to inferior technology or superior numbers. We lost to a species that has achieved perfect synthesis with their environment. The humans turned their entire planet into a weapon system more sophisticated than anything our military doctrine anticipated. Elaborate, commanded another counselor. Our forces are trained to fight in controlled environments, Krextor explained. Ships, cities, even terraformed battlefields. We rely on our technology to overcome environmental challenges. The humans do the opposite. They use their environment to overcome technological challenges. Every forest became a trap, every mountain a fortress. They didn't just hide in their wilderness, they weaponized it. He activated a holographic display showing tactical data. Look at these patterns. Our forces had every advantage. Shields, armor, weapons that could vaporize matter. Yet we couldn't counter enemies who knew which vines would hold weight, which insects carried diseases, which mud would jam our equipment. They fought us with the accumulated knowledge of millions of years of evolution on their world. The counselors studied the data in silence. Finally, the Prime Counselor spoke. What do you recommend? That we do not attempt another invasion of Earth, Krextor said boldly. Furthermore, I recommend we open diplomatic relations. A species that can turn primitive resources into such effective weapons might have much to teach us. And frankly, if they ever develop FTL technology and decide to seek revenge... He let the implication hang in the air. If humans could do this on their own world, what might they do if they brought their warfare philosophy to other planets? The council deliberated for hours while Krextor waited. Finally, they rendered their verdict. Your failure has cost the Empire greatly, the Prime Counselor said. However, your analysis shows wisdom. You will not face execution. Instead, you will lead our diplomatic mission to Earth. If these humans are as formidable as you claim, better to have them as allies than enemies. On Earth, the aftermath of victory brought its own challenges. The united front that had defeated the Zelathi began to fracture as old rivalries resurfaced. Some nations wanted to reverse-engineer captured alien technology immediately. Others argued for caution, fearing rapid advancement might attract more invaders. General Webb found himself in Switzerland, mediating between world leaders who couldn't agree on humanity's next steps. The Chinese delegate was speaking passionately about the need for a unified Earth government when alarms began blaring. Another fleet approaching Earth, the watch officer reported, but They're broadcasting diplomatic codes. Webb moved to the command center, where screens showed a smaller Zalathi fleet approaching at sublight speeds, a sign of peaceful intentions. The lead ship transmitted a message. "People of Earth," came Krextor's voice. "I return not as a conqueror, but as an envoy. The Zalathi Empire acknowledges your victory and your sovereignty. We wish to discuss alternative relationships." The debate in the emergency session was fierce. Some wanted to refuse any contact, fearing treachery. Others saw an opportunity to gain galactic technology and knowledge. Webb found himself thinking of Sun Tzu's ancient wisdom. The supreme excellence is not to win 100 victories in 100 battles, but to subdue the enemy without fighting. "We should meet with them," Webb argued, "but on our terms, in our environment. Let them come to the jungle." The meeting site was carefully chosen, a clearing in the Amazon where human special forces had won one of their first major victories. Krextor and a small delegation of unarmed Zalathi would meet with Earth's representatives, surrounded by the wilderness that had defeated their empire. The day of the meeting, Krextor stepped out of his shuttle and into the humid air of the rainforest. Even knowing what to expect, the sheer biological density of the place overwhelmed his senses. Life was everywhere, in forms his scanners could barely categorize. He began to truly understand how his forces had been so thoroughly outmatched. General Webb waited in the clearing, flanked by special forces operators from various nations. They wore simple uniforms rather than armor, carried visible weapons that looked primitive by galactic standards. But Krextor had learned not to underestimate human simplicity. "Commander Krextor," Webb greeted him. "Welcome to Earth, the real Earth, not the cities you expected to conquer." "General Webb," Krextor replied, performing the Zalathi gesture of respect. "I have come to learn from our defeat, and perhaps to offer something in return." They sat at a simple wooden table, another deliberate choice to emphasize human resourcefulness. Around them, the jungle sang with life. Occasionally, Krextor noticed movement in the trees, reminders that they were surrounded by the same forces that had destroyed his armies. "You seek our technology," Krextor began. "Faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, medical advances. I am authorized to offer these things." "In exchange for?" Webb asked. "Knowledge," Krextor admitted. "Your military has achieved something unique in the galaxy. You've proven that harmony with an environment can triumph over technological dominance. This philosophy could revolutionize warfare among the stars." Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen, who had been instrumental in the Borneo campaign, leaned forward. "You want us to teach you how we fight?" "More than that," Krextor said. "We want to understand how you think. Most species spend their development trying to overcome their environment. You've done the opposite. You've embraced it, made it part of your very identity. This connection to your world is something we've lost." The negotiations continued for hours. The humans were cautious but interested. They knew they couldn't remain isolated forever, not now that the galaxy knew of their existence. But they also knew their greatest strength lay in their unique relationship with Earth. "We'll share some knowledge," Webb finally agreed. "But gradually and on certain conditions. First, Earth's sovereignty is absolute and permanent. Second, any technology transfer must benefit all humanity, not just certain nations. Third, some of our military techniques remain secret. Our connection to this world is our ultimate defense." "Acceptable," Krextor said. "But I have a warning for you as well. Your victory over us has been noticed. Other species, some far less reasonable than the Zalathi, may see you as a threat or a prize. You will need allies." "Then we'll choose them carefully," Webb replied. "And any who come as invaders will learn the same lesson you did." As the formal agreements were drafted, something unexpected happened. A young Zalathi warrior, part of Krextor's honor guard, suddenly collapsed. The humid air and intense biological activity of the jungle had overwhelmed his respiratory system. Without hesitation, one of the human Special Forces medics rushed forward. Using a combination of advanced first aid and traditional plant remedies shown to her by local tribes, she stabilized the alien warrior. The sight of a human saving a Zalathi life, using the same jungle knowledge that had been used to kill them weeks before, created a powerful moment of understanding. "This is what makes you dangerous," Krextor observed quietly. "Not your weapons or your tactics, but your ability to use your world for any purpose, destruction or healing, war or peace." Over the following months, the relationship between Earth and the Zalathi Empire evolved from cold negotiation to cautious partnership. Human advisors began teaching select alien officers about environmental warfare, though they kept their deepest secrets. In return, Earth received carefully controlled access to galactic technology. The galaxy watched with fascination as humans began to appear in spaceports and trading stations. They were always alert, always observing, studying new environments with the same intensity they had applied to their own world. Some species found them unsettling, predators pretending to be prey. Others saw opportunity in alliance with the race that had humbled the Zalathi. A year after the failed invasion, Admiral Chen, promoted after her actions in Borneo, stood on the bridge of humanity's first FTL-capable warship. It was a hybrid design, Zalathi technology adapted to human sensibilities. The ship's hydroponic bays grew earth plants that could be weaponized if needed. Its corridors were designed to confuse boarders while giving defenders advantage. Even in space, humans carried their jungle with them. "Where to first, Admiral?" her navigator asked. Chen looked at the star charts showing the vast galaxy humanity was about to enter properly for the first time. There would be challenges, she knew, species that would test them in new ways. But Earth's children carried hard-won knowledge now. "Let's visit that world the Cathari mentioned, Thanatos 4, she decided. "I want to meet these silicon-based natives who defended their crystal caverns. I think we might have something in common." As humanity's first true starship engaged its FTL drive, the crew carried with them the lessons of Earth's wilderness. They were explorers and diplomats now, but always warriors at heart. The galaxy had learned that Earth's jungles were deadly to invaders. Now it would learn that humans could make any environment their own. Back on Earth, in hidden bases and training grounds, a new generation of special forces prepared for threats yet unknown. They studied xenobiology alongside traditional tracking. They learned to use alien technology while maintaining their connection to the natural world. Earth was no longer isolated, but its wilderness remained humanity's greatest weapon. The Zalathi had mocked Earth's forests and mountains as primitive refuges. They had learned, at terrible cost, that these wild places were actually humanity's greatest teachers. Now, as humans took their first steps among the stars, they carried that teaching with them. In the depths of the Amazon, where the war had been won, life continued as it had for millions of years. Birds called, insects buzzed, and predators stalked their prey. But now there were new sounds, too. The occasional hum of anti-gravity engines as human ships practiced low-altitude maneuvers between the trees, preparing for jungle warfare on alien worlds. The galaxy had given humanity technology. In return, whether they knew it or not, humanity would teach the galaxy something it had forgotten in its rush to the stars. That true power came not from conquering nature, but from understanding it, respecting it, and when necessary, becoming one with it. General Webb, now Earth's military ambassador to the Galactic Council, often reflected on how the invasion had changed humanity's destiny. They had faced annihilation and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. The jungle that had saved them had also taught them their place in the universe, not as conquerors, but as survivors who understood that every world had its own lessons to teach. Standing before the Galactic Council for Earth's formal induction into the interstellar community, Webb delivered a message that would be remembered for generations. We come to you not as primitives who got lucky, but as a species that has learned the most fundamental truth of existence, that knowledge of one's environment is the greatest weapon of all. We protected our world with that knowledge. Now we offer to share it, to teach the galaxy what we have learned. That technology without wisdom is weakness, but wisdom combined with will is invincible. Earth stands ready to join the galactic community, but know this: our jungles, our mountains, our oceans remain sovereign and sacred. Any who come in peace will find teachers and allies. Any who come in war will find that every forest on Earth remembers how to kill, and every human remembers how to use it. The council chamber was silent as Webb finished speaking. Then, one by one, representatives from across the galaxy stood in acknowledgement. The humans had earned their place not through technological achievement, but through something rarer, the wisdom to use their weaknesses as strengths. As Earth took its place among the stars, children around the world grew up with new dreams. Some wanted to explore distant planets, to see what wonders the galaxy held. But others looked to their own forests and mountains with new appreciation, knowing that these wild places had saved humanity and might do so again. The Special Forces units that had won Earth's freedom became the stuff of legend. Their tactics were studied, their philosophy debated, their achievements held as the gold standard of planetary defense. But the operators themselves remained in the shadows, training in Earth's wild places, always ready for the next threat. And in the depths of space, on trading routes and frontier worlds, a new saying emerged among the various species of the galaxy. Never fight a human in their environment. They don't just use terrain, they become it. The Zalathi Empire's failed invasion had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo through the ages. Technology could fail, numbers could be overcome, but a species that truly knew its home could never be conquered. Earth's wilderness had spoken, and the universe had listened. Humanity's journey to the stars had begun not with rockets and mathematics, but with mud and blood, shadows and patience, the ancient knowledge of the hunt combined with the fierce love of home. They had proven that in a universe of high technology and grand civilizations, sometimes the most primitive things were the most powerful. The jungle had won. And now, humanity would carry its lessons to the stars.